Hello everybody, JGC Anime here, and today we are going to be reviewing So I'm a Spider, So What? An anime that apparently was animated by the same studio of a either really good or really bad show called Berserker. I don't know, I never watched it, but this isn't what that's what I'm going to be talking about today. I'm going to be talking about So I'm a Spider, So What? So without further ado, let's just hop right into this. So, the basic story to start off the summoning. Anyway, so basically how it starts is there's this whole class, they're all just chilling, relaxing, and kind of similar to the plot of the anime Alpharetta, which I might review eventually. But this time, they instead all die. They all get reincarnated. The whole class gets reincarnated into this new world as different beings. So there's, such as like their teacher is like this elf girl, and a lot of them are like people who are growing up. However, our main character is a spider, a girl who became a spider, and ever since she hatched has now been trying to survive and make it in the world. So yeah, that's basically how the story starts. It gets more involved, and I'll explain more about the rest of the storyline once we get to the spoiler section, but let's just talk about stuff I liked and disliked. So, stuff I liked, I thought the animation was decent for the most part, and by decent I mean there are times when it's actually pretty good and times it's absolutely horrendous, but I again can talk about that later on. As I mentioned before, for dislike, I thought the animation wasn't very good, but one thing I actually really liked were the openings and endings. Well, I definitely admit the opening one and the ending one were better. I really liked the second opening for the second half. The ending for the second half isn't as good. It's fine. It just seems like the main thing she's doing is shouting, so it, like, because the main protagonist of the series sings for a majority of these, at least for the endings. And yeah, this is so spoiler-free thoughts. I guess there were some things that felt off and on to me. Like one thing that was really peculiar to me was how it's paced, because the story likes to like jump back and forth between time, such as the fact the spider starts like 15 years before the rest of the cast, so they're constantly jumping from the future and the past to try to, you know, explain things from the different perspectives, which is why we have both the focus on the spider as well as her old classmates who are now teenagers or whatever age they are in the later years. And yeah, that's all I can really say without spoiling too much, since I have a lot of stuff to say about the whole show in general, so I'm just gonna be hopping into a spoiler section. So here is a timestamp to when the spoiler section reaches its conclusion, and I'll give my final results. If you have watched So I'm a Spider, So What, I recommend sticking around to hear all my full thoughts, but if you're someone who's already seen it, then you're allowed to skip, but I do appreciate if people stuck around if they've already seen it. So anyway, let's count down for 5. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so one thing I'd have to say is that I'm going back to the animation. While I admit there were times when the animation was good, sometimes it was some of the worst stuff I've ever seen. Like, there's this big CGI battle at the end of the season, because it's meant to be like 2D animated, but there's a heavy use on CGI. Now, when it's the spider, it doesn't look as bad, because the spiders surprisingly look decent for being mostly CGI. But the human models are horrible. Like, they are really bad. And when the CGI anime characters fight, I can't help but laugh at how bad it is. Like, even as someone who normally doesn't notice a changed animation style, like I generally don't really mind it. As I mentioned earlier, I watched Alpharetta, and the animation for that didn't really bother me, other than a few bits of CGI that looked horrendous. But for the most part, I could still accept it. But for the animation, they rely so much on CGI, especially in like the last bit of it, that it's ridiculous how much they use it. And the story's not that much better. Like, at first, the story was making complete sense. While I wasn't entirely a fan of the going from past to future and past to future and past to future over and over again, I still kind of got into it. I was like, okay, I can roll with this. But then, halfway through the season, there's just this thing where there's like this big overthrowing of the throne. And then the group gets trapped, the main characters get trapped in a forest. And right out of nowhere, when they're just trapped in this forest, one of the characters who has turned into a dragon has shown up and comes to save them all in the most poorly animated and poorly executed way they could have done it. Like, there's just the whole thing is, if I can play this clip, I won't play the clip on screen because I might get copyrighted and they might take my video down, so I won't play it. But in the scene, basically the whole group is just in the forest, and then suddenly the dragon shows up and is just like, "Oh guys, I'm here, hop on my back." It's so poorly executed. It's so bad I couldn't help but laugh. In my eyes, this anime is just one of those, it's so bad you enjoy it anime. Like, I thought it was horribly paced, it was terribly executed, and it was just so bad, but I loved it at the exact same time. And it's so bad it's good in my eyes. Now, what's kind of funny is that the entire season they're like building up for this big reveal about how the main character ends up joining the enemy side, like the villain side. And maybe if it wasn't completely obvious, I would have been surprised, but it's just as obvious as an Attack on Titan reveal, like back in season 1 of Attack on Titan, where it was super obvious about some of the stuff that happened, where it's so obvious who the character is and what's going to happen to her, that the only thing I was wondering is how it was going to happen. Like, they were trying to build it up as like some big reveal. Not to mention, because I ended up watching the dub of this show just because I really didn't want to put in the mental effort to read text, even if it would distract me from the horrible animation, there is some weird casting going on there. Because for one, like half the background characters sound exactly like the main character, Shun, of the human side, making it clear that they were really low on casting. And also, while there were some voice actors that clearly put a lot of heart and effort into their voices, there were other ones, like the voice of the dragon, that if they were putting emotion into it, I couldn't tell. It was like so bad. I just, even as someone who could generally enjoy dubs, for that voice, it clearly sounded, even if they were trying, it sounded like they didn't care. Like they did not care. They were just told to scream or shout or say something, and they just kind of were like, "Oh yeah, It was just so bad. Oh my gosh, just thinking about it, the whole series just made me laugh with how bad it was. So, for one, there's a lot of good stuff too, I admit. Like, I thought the concept of the main character being a spider who leveled up her levels, I thought that was interesting. But halfway through the season, I just didn't care anymore because by that point, the spider was completely overpowered. But I'm not going to say I hate watching overpowered characters. I just finished this other show recently called Spirit Chronicles, which I will make a review for that in the future because I think it deserves its own review. Where I like characters who are overpowered. I like them. But it's just so frustrating when those overpowered characters don't really do much. Well, like when she uses when the main character, I think his name is Kumiko, uses her overpowered abilities, it's awesome. It's freaking amazing. It's just freaking amazing. But then she just kind of sits around for the next 20 minutes. As I mentioned before, the thing that I probably hate the most about the show is, as I mentioned before, it kind of jumps from the past to the present to the past to the present to the past to the present to the past to the future, and yada yada yada. One thing I really didn't like that. Like, as I mentioned before, it grew on me to a certain extent, but I hated how there were sometimes whole episodes where we didn't even see the spider. There were times when the spider, Kumiko, just wouldn't show up for the entire episode. And all I could think was, okay, can we go back to the spider who was way more interesting? Like, the human characters are really boring. And I was really hoping for it to go like more of a Overlord way. I really liked Overlord's way they handled everything. And I just wish that it handled itself better. Honestly, if I had to pick this one and Slime, like the time I got reincarnated as a slime, if I had to pick between those two, I would pick Slime 100%. Which the review for season 2 of that will also be coming out eventually, but I didn't like this. It was, but I didn't hate it either. It was so bad, it was good, in my opinion. As a series, I would watch a season 2 just to see if it got an improvement or just stayed bad, because I loved it for all the stuff it didn't want me to love it for. I found the horrible animation hilarious. I found the story inconsistent and way too mixed. Like, sometimes it was too fast and sometimes it was too slow. And overall, I had too much of a good time with how bad it was. It was just so bad, it was good. And that's all I can really say, because it's just that. So bad, it was good. So we're at the conclusion now. Final thoughts? It was fine. But it definitely isn't an anime I think would be any, like, god tier, amazing anime. But it was more like it was a so bad, it's good storyline. And would I watch a season 2 if it came out? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. But I definitely am curious to see if they would continue the story, as it did end rather oddly. But yeah, with everything said and done though, I'd probably have to rate this anime as a story, without my personal bias of saying so bad it's good. As an actual anime, it would probably rest around a 6 out of 10. It really didn't stick around for good story, and the animation at times was horrible. But overall, it was just a so bad it's good storyline. But yeah, if you want to give it a shot yourself, go ahead. If you've already seen it, then you know what I'm talking about. Anyway, thank you all for watching, and if you want to stick around for more reviews, don't forget to subscribe. Anyway, that's all I have to say, and I thank you all for watching. Peace!